Next up, we have a wonderful panel here and here to share some real-world examples of using AI to improve asset-centric project outcomes is a panel led by Nicholas Johnson of Kahua. Joining Nicholas is Hugh Seaton with Quantum Rise, Brian Moore of Kahua, Andy Jackson of IBM, and Brian Ellsworth of Mayo Clinic. Again, their full bios and slides are in the app. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy the panel. Nicholas?
Thank you, Brian. Lots of Brians here. Never enough Brians, right? Right, Brians?
Never enough.
Well, welcome, everybody. Glad to be sharing some information with you today. Glad to be at CURT again. And I will start with Brian Moore. We're here to talk about asset-centric outcomes. And Brian, you and I have both had the privilege of speaking to CURT audiences before, specifically about the asset-centric project management methodology, a means of collecting the owner's operational information as we design and construct and commission and so forth. But can you give everybody just a 2-minute, 3-minute kind of recap on what asset-centric means to us and how our journey brought us there?
Yeah, let me start off by framing it up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and frame up the discussion by saying pretty much everybody in this room has used a project management system here, probably since the late 1990s. You had Prolog, Expedition, and Constructware, and almost every single owner in here has a enterprise asset management system. So the fundamental problem has been the two systems don't communicate. They're great tools. The project management system is a great tool for design and construction, and the EAM system is a great tool from an operations perspective. So that's where we saw the opportunity in asset-centric project management to start tagging the documents and the attributes necessary during design and construction so that we can, throughout the life cycle of the project, seamlessly and digitally hand that information over to the owner with the objective of removing the project after the project.
Excellent. And Andy, you're managing business all over North America. Your IBM clients, your Maximo clients, are they experiencing these problems that Brian talks about, how they receive a facility or a utility and they have no asset information?
Yeah, absolutely for me. So in my world, data is key, right? So knowing where your assets are and what assets you own is absolutely paramount, right? Having trustworthy data in a system like Maximo gives you insights and information so that you can make smart, educated decisions around how you maintain and operate your equipment, right? I've had some horror stories of customers of mine or prospects of mine who have had to finger in every single piece of equipment or every single piece of data, or they hire summer students, for example, to bulk load data into a system. And human nature says that's prone to error, right? Which is going to cause issues downstream from a maintenance and operations perspective. So where I'm going with this really is having automation and the data in a system, in an EAM system of some sort on day one, allows you to define your strategy and have insights into risk, right, that those assets pose to your organization if they go down.
So can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Real quick here on that? About 3 years ago, we interviewed about 200 owners, and surprisingly, we got the same answer from all 200 owners. Every time they finished a project, they were inheriting risk, not inheriting value. And an exercise that I recommend each of you go through is get everybody in the room, construction, operations, IT, security, and start asking the question of all the problems that you incur once commissioning happens to 2 years later. You will have so many drop the mic moments, as was just mentioned here a minute ago. And that's what we've experienced the past several years and why we started the asset-centric journey ourselves.
Andy, I assume that if I'm a pharmaceutical company or a manufacturer, if I've got a complex building that's full of assets, I think of, oil and gas or energy, it's a shell of a building with a lot of important assets in it. Same thing for most manufacturing. I assume that they receive a facility, and if they have no data, they have to pay probably millions of dollars to build that database and take months or even a year to build that database before they can really know what they're operating out there. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair and very accurate, right? And the longer you wait to get that data into the system, the prolonged wait for for value, right? And really
Yeah.
knowing and understanding how you're operating your equipment.
And I
building.
know that for for the other side of the equation, for some of our public customers, I think of our K-12 school systems, they can't afford to do that. They have much fewer assets in their inventory, much less data that they need to track, but they don't have any manpower, they don't have any financial resources to go build that. So they build those asset databases as somebody puts a wrench on equipment. Something breaks, they go out to the field to fix it. That's when they finally get it in their asset registry. So I think I've got some insight on this, and I'll thank Matthew again from FMI. A great presentation yesterday, and we borrowed from FMI data to give you this information. I think the reason is when we deliver that thumb drive as constructors that has all the asset information, all the as-built and O&M, everything that the owner asks for, when we deliver that thumb drive, 95% of it goes unused. And I contend, love to hear y'all's opinion, I contend it is because 90% of it is unstructured. That same FMI study pointed out that we spend, as AEC professionals, we spend 13% of our time looking for data on our assets. That's an eighth of our time. That's, every other day almost, every other half day, I should say. All right. Brian Ellsworth, I think you can help us validate this FMI study because you guys did a study of your own.
Yeah, so the study that we did, we found that 40% of the asset information is collected, but that doesn't mean it's collected consistently. That doesn't mean it's consistent or collected in an organized fashion. And I think it is common, as we heard yesterday, as we hear a lot as talking different owners, it's a common problem and it is in the industry. For example, December 14th, way back in 2025, I was watching the Nebraska-Texas A&M National Championship Volleyball game set 4. Nebraska is up 33-32. I got a phone call at 4:30 in the afternoon saying that there's pink water on the floor in radiology on the 3rd floor of the Gonda building. So left the volleyball game, came downtown, called in contractors. We spent an hour and a half cleaning up because we couldn't find what system was leaking. We couldn't find where the valves were to turn it off. We couldn't find the fact that the strainers were plugged, that the radiant heat was not getting on the exterior of the building, thus causing it to freeze. So that's a real-life example, happened just a month ago.
Wow.
That we didn't have the right asset information.
So to be clear, you audited once a project that you audited what was delivered on that thumb drive. What was supposed to be 100% asset information, you got 40% of it.
Correct.
Wow.
I know it wasn't scientific, but yesterday I was completely surprised when the question was asked to the large audience yesterday, at what percent did the audience felt that they were getting the data? And it went all the way down to 20% level of confidence with everybody in the room before somebody actually raised their hand.
Yeah. Wow. Hugh, you've got some, I've heard you speak on your podcast about structured data versus unstructured data. What is this 90% number? Does that resonate to you? I said, I think we only use 5% of it because most of it is unstructured.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's two parts to this. One of them is what's structured and what it's produced for. So you're getting a bunch of data that's been focused on the process of building, not organized around the asset.
Yeah.
So people are doing their jobs. And, how many times have you heard someone say, I don't really need a terabyte of RFI conversations? But thank you for that, but that's never going to help anyone. So I think structure is one thing, but you can turn a PDF into structure. Another thing is where is it organized and how has it been? Obviously, you don't want construction crews early in a project to be thinking too hard about how it'll be handed over later, but it should be part of the conversation, even if it's just where the buckets are or what the tags are and so on. So I think structure is part of it, but also from the beginning, a process or a system that is already putting it where it needs to be so that you're not going back and saying, I don't need to know, of that 95%, you hear the same thing that 95% of construction data doesn't get used. Well, I think that's maybe a misuse of the definition of data. Just because something exists doesn't mean it's data I'm going to use. right? I don't need to know lots of what goes on during the 18 months of building a building. I need to know what's relevant to use of a building later and the assets within it. So I think there's a couple things going on there. One of them is, yeah, it's unstructured. Sometimes it's handwritten or there's notes and so on and so forth. But also, what was relevant to somebody in month 3 of a build is not necessarily going to be relevant in year 3 of somebody owning and operating a building. So I think there's more than one thing going on there.
Andy?
I'll just jump in
Yeah.
quick too. I mean, I'll echo what Hugh just said there. In my world, I find a lot of the data that customers do have is siloed as well, right? So they have the data, it's just in dispersed systems spread out amongst their organization, and the right hand's not talking to the left hand. So they're not getting as much value out of the data that they do have.
Brian Moore, that's a good tee up. Andy's teed us up really well. I wanted to ask you, what have owners relayed to you about silos of data and kind of the inability for data to speak to each other?
Do you have that slide I can kind of speak
We
to?
do have a slide for you.
So what's amazing is we had a consultant did just a simple study for us, and most owners pay for the same data to be re-entered over 4 times. Think about that. The same data re-entered over 4 times. What you're seeing depicted on the slide here is the possibility of how data can flow from the beginning on the left side, like a facility condition assessment, or from a model. The asset-centric piece, which is the Cahoua component, then on the right side, you have solutions like Esri. You have EAM solutions like IBM Maximo and others. So again, the whole objective here, because this really is the mountain that has really stopped people from progressing forward, is the lack of integration and digitally movement of data. And that's been the biggest thing that we've heard from owners. And so now you're able to move data all the way from the beginning to the end without re-entering data. So instead of the handover process being at the end, you actually have the handover process as part of the process. You should have your asset data as you're going along. If you have a 4-year project, in year 2, you install an asset, you should have all that asset data and documents to be able to pass over, for example, to an IBM Maximo.
So it's more about the method of how you tag that information along the way rather than a sophisticated technology at the end of a project.
And it is critical, right? As an owner, you have to understand up front what's important to you, what assets are important, what attributes are important, and each asset can be dynamic in terms of the number of attributes that you want to be able to collect. But it really is, it's about how do I go through this life cycle and collect that information so it's available for everybody downstream to be able to harness.
So to be clear too, Brian and I are Cahoua, so I'm going to show you slides that have Cahoua logos. We're talking about a methodology for collecting information, not as much a technology as a methodology. Okay, we're going to talk in our terms, in our language, but if your project management system doesn't allow you to do this kind of thing, demand more of your vendor. You know, that's our message to you. So I'll go back to you, Andy. IBM's part of this. You receive this information. What's your take on these kind of silos of information and how we tie them together?
Yeah, I echo exactly what Brian said, right? So having integrations and being able to bring those assets into a system like Maximo as soon as possible, going back to what I said earlier, gives you the foresight, allows you to set the strategy, define how you want to manage that asset or that building, and then understand the risk, right? In my world, a lot of my customers are oil and gas, and if an asset goes down for whatever reason, we're talking potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Environmental spills, regulatory bodies. There's a lot of reputational harm that can be done when the assets aren't tracked right or you don't have the right information in the system, right? So having that is absolutely key, and if you can do it with integration to make things as streamlined and as error resistant as possible is big.
Brian Ellsworth, you're the owner. What's your take on these silos of information and trying to make them talk to each other? And I'll preface it, Brian, that when I hear, and all of us probably go to more than one conference, and I'm at a lot of conferences, and how often do I hear this term, single source of truth? And probably at some point in my past I used it. When I hear it now, I almost want to hit the buzzer, and then call out a couple more words. Because I don't think there'll ever be a single source of truth. I think there are going to be sources of truth, and what we can do is tie them together. Let me give you an example. We're project management, right? We're project people. We're not what Andy's team does. We're not asset management in operations. That's a different source of information. It's going to always need to have its own kind of characteristics. A lot of it is overlapping. A lot of it's the same. But Mayo Clinic, I'm sure, has a back office accounting system, as does every constructor, every owner. Accounting's never going to want to lose control of their data and give some job site superintendent access into Oracle Financials or whatever they're using. So there's going to be multiple places where information needs to be. And my take is that we need to make those silos clean, accurate, and then connect them together. Brian Ellsworth?
Yeah, so I know that project number 7R62117 was on the third floor of the Baldwin Building in 1994. And that's how I think of, well, that asset information, you'll find that in that project file. You'll find that in the project management system, in File Manager in that location. But the maintenance person that has been there maybe 6 months doesn't really know that that project ever existed. And so as they start to manage that situation or manage the preventative maintenance, it is definitely a silo. And our team's mindset on the build side is to manage by project, but not to manage by the built environment. Having a tool to be able to really collect the information during the design and plan about that information during the design, collaborate with the construction industry partner that's installing it at the time, and then turning it over to our staff that is going to maintain the facility. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, to be able to manage our facility, manage the built environment, to eliminate that silo, to say we collaborated really from conception to operation.
All right, so Brian Moore, we've talked a bit about what a better outcome is. How then can AI help us get to better asset-centric project outcomes?
So a key thing that was discussed a little bit earlier was unstructured versus structured data. And literally, one of the fundamental problems that we have right now in the construction industry is majority of the information that is being handed over from design and construction to operations is unstructured data. What I mean by that is, 10,000 change orders, X number of RFIs. It doesn't have context as compared to if you associate an asset to documents. You now have all this information that's pertinent to that asset, which makes the AI model, in terms of its outcome when you ask questions, much more relevant. It doesn't hallucinate based upon the information that it's building upon. So as an industry, we can greatly benefit by tagging documents to an asset from an AI perspective. The other thing I'll just quickly mention here, though, because we just got to talk about all these integrations, we can also greatly help bringing in young kids to want to come in this industry, because not many young kids want to enter data 4 different times in 4 different systems. So just doing some of the basics and setting things up will set us up to be able to harness AI going forward.
What are some of the things that Kahua is working on for AI going forward?
Well, there's 2 components that we have. One is a assist concept, which you can think about any high volume, high value business processes that you may have. And basically you look at that as like your punch list process and utilizing video so somebody could just walk around via the phone. The ability to be able to take drawings and read the drawings and identify that there's an asset on that drawing and tag it to the asset, so you don't have to do that after the fact, which is enormously time consuming. And then on the flip side, you have, beyond assist, you have this concept of create. We believe that everybody in this room is unique. You have unique business processes. And so we have, one of our things that we're showing here today is the ability via natural language for you to be able to create applications. Since our beginning, you've been able to utilize our K-Builder, but you needed a developer to build applications. But with Create, Homer Simpson can build applications on Kahua. And our goal is to consolidate all those spreadsheets, Word documents, and everything else that are being utilized throughout the organization, and to start consolidating. So allow this industry to innovate, create, and consolidate solutions going forward.
Andy, what's IBM working on?
We are working on all sorts of things at IBM in general, right? I think IBM's book of AI business last year was 12.6 billion with a B, right? Wow. So we are infusing AI in absolutely everything IBM does as a company, and Maximo is not excluded from that by any means. So there's two different categories, and there's lots of things that we're working on, and I don't want to get into each and every one, but I kind of group them into two categories, right? So there's the proactive side of the fence. So we're looking at asset history, meter readings, data that we're gathering from PLCs or sensors on these devices to help provide proactive notifications that are actionable by the maintenance team. So in Brian's example of the water line breaking, right? Maybe there was some data that we could have used or AI could have looked at to help be a little bit more preventative or predictive in that sense, right? Lots of things like that. On the other side of the coin, we're working on things to make our technicians' lives easier, right? So we're using natural language chatbots, which I think we're going to hear shortly, to help the maintenance people, the mechanics, the people that are out there turning the wrenches, know what they need, when they need it, how they need it, and allow them to go out into the field only one time, right? We're hoping to increase that first-time fix rate and reduce the downtime as much as possible.
Excellent. So Hugh, you represent everybody in the industry that's not Kahua or IBM Maximo. What are some of the things that you think you've seen, I'd say kind of your best practices, help owners get started using AI, and then maybe some things that you'd share with us?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good software out there. There's a lot of startups that are doing interesting things. But in terms of getting started, look, the reality is start with the chatbots that you'll see in a moment, Gemini and Claude. A couple things about that, especially if you're paying for it, and even if you're not, it's cloud software at this point. So there is a fear out there that's unfounded that they're going to grab your data and train it and someone will access it, and that's just not true. Even if it's free, there's a quick way to turn it off. What you'll see with the first one,
Are you ready to
yeah,
run
go
this?
ahead, go ahead. I'll talk while it does its thing.
Here are two examples
What I like
of
about this,
sort of everyday
turn the
tools
sound off.
that complement and
sound
are
better here.
often an interface where
Can you guys
users
kill
are
that
going to
sound?
use AI.
Awesome.
So there's two things I want to show
The
you.
reason
One
I
of them
put these
is
two up here
a
is
chatbot,
we're in a
which
funny
obviously
place
everyone's
with
heard of,
AI
but
in
it's
that,
interesting how good
unlike
they've gotten.
other
So I'm
types of
using one in
software, this is a little
Gemini
bit
rather
like the
than walk
internet
through the
was
whole
in, like,
thing. I'll just show you something I did.
So we're
I
watching it
uploaded
change as we speak.
an
And what's
image
interesting about
and
this
said,
year
act
is
as
the
a
models
construction
continue to get better.
project
It's
owner's
not-
rep, analyze this
The
image of
models
our
continue
project
to get
site,
better,
matrix.
but the magic is actually in the tools that they're in. So there's a term called agent harness. So if you've heard of Claude Cowork, that's an example. Some of that's kind of baked into things like Gemini that you're seeing here. And what's interesting is Gemini's been really good about this over the last couple of months, introducing entirely new capabilities. So what you're seeing here is they just uploaded a photo from the site and asked it questions. Is there anything I should know about this? I'm not going to go through all the pieces in there so much as it's a quick way to say I couldn't be there today,
Construction
so show me a
activities are
photo.
underway.
Were there any
Um,
safety
Do you
incidents
see any
or
obvious
any
safety
things I
concerns
should
like
be
workers
looking
without
at?
hard
It
hats,
had a
cluttered
number- it wasn't
walkways,
just
and
that,
so
it
on?
looked
So
at
I
some
asked
of the
the
storage on
relatively
site looked a
detailed,
little
not too
weird.
bad,
The
but
point
you
is, as
told
an
it,
owner,
you know,
can't always
who
be
you
there,
are,
but
what
you
you
probably get a
wanted to do,
snapshot.
and what to
Or
focus
maybe you don't
on.
have the time for it.
It came
Just
back with a
really
pretty good
easy way.
answer.
And look, it
What I
may or may
didn't do
not
is tell it
all
to be
right, and it
concise,
often
which, by the
will
way, I
call out
recommend you
things
do.
that
I also
aren't
didn't tell it not
necessarily- I know that, and I'm
to
not
fabricate
worried
any
about it.
information, which isn't so relevant here, but is usually.
The point is, it's prompting you, and it's giving you things to think about. At the end of the day, one of the things I'm a big proponent of is I don't love AI making you approve something at the very end. It should be elevating your thinking. It should be giving you things to consider. There's an awful lot of experience in this room, and you don't want to be reduced to someone approving at the end. Your thinking and judgment are valuable along the way. This is an example of that, where it's giving you things that it's seeing that you may not have had time to pick out, or maybe the photo wasn't that great. But then you apply your judgment and say, well, I know the project, and I know why they're doing that. Or, you know what, I am going to call that out, because I don't want something I just spent $50,000, sitting out in the rain, whatever it might be. So that's one, is just the ability. In this case, I just uploaded a photo, asked it what to do. What's important about this, and the reason I bring it up in the context of AI continuing to get better faster than we've ever been used to, is they just came out, they being Google, just came out with a thing called Gemini Agentic Vision or something like that. They always have these wonderful names. At least it's not Nano Banana. And it's able to pick out things in images that are way finer than was true before. And this is something that's generally available. You don't have to pay a lot for it. And over time, what you're going to see in these, the models that are at the frontier like this will find themselves in places like Kahua who need it to bake a little bit. And often, have security and other things that they want to do and how they want to host it. but you can understand what's
Really a good
happening
idea.
and play around.
So
with
it came
things
through
a
with
little
what's
less
going on,
mission-driven,
which was
maybe a
great.
little bit more
Steel
about
erection,
keeping
glazing,
an eye on
facade
things.
work,
So
scaffolding
that's
and
number one.
access, material
Stroke
staging.
number two.
It then said, what are concerns? So the first one was
So the
improper,
next one, I talked
improper
about,
glass storage, which
agentic
is great.
harnesses, and originally
The
wanted to
foreground
have
is a little
Claude
congested.
Anyone here
Honestly,
heard of
that's a
Claude
bit of a
Cowork?
means and methods thing,
If not,
so you
Google
might
it.
not
It's
worry about
interesting.
that. But
Basically, they took this product called
the
Claude
glass
Code,
storage
which has
might be
been,
something that you do have
lots and lots of
a
the code
comment
that you're
about or a
going to be
question.
using was written with this tool. It's
Fall
kind of
protection,
a,
again, that's a bit of a
code
means and
editor,
methods thing, but
with-
just
with
maybe
a
you
bunch of
take note of
agents in
it.
the background. They said, "This is
PPE
amazingly
compliance, it notes
useful.
that
It's
everybody
made
is
for
wearing what they should.
non-developers." So it's
So the
what they
point
call
is, it
an
gives you a
agent
recommendation. Often the recommendations are so without context, it doesn't matter. The value for you is that you can quickly
wanna jump
upload
forward?
things
Yeah, no, we're
and get a
So what
pretty
I did here,
comprehensive
because
view
actually
of
this is an
super
example that's
convenient
actually
way
Co-work
to
wasn't
interact
looking for it.
with other
There you go.
systems
What I
that
did
have
here
the
is
security,
you're
have the
going to continue to
memory,
find,
have the
especially amongst younger
access
people that are
control
used
that
to
you're
using
used
tools
to in a
like
big
ChatGPT and
platform.
Claude and so on. And I'm a
But
bit more of a fan
you
of
don't
Claude,
necessarily want to log all the way into them if maybe you're doing a daily
Um,
report or you want to make a
is the
note or
ability to
add
think
some
of that as one
information.
pane of glass.
So in this
So what you'll
case,
see here as this
I'm going to
works through
connect
is
into
I actually
Kahua.
enter
So I've
a
already set
field
that up. That's
observation.
actually not
And
something
because
that
there's an
takes a bit of
integration
work. And
already,
on
in
the
this
Kahua
case with
side,
Kahua, which I
they've
did
done
set
a
up,
good job of really
and
making
watch
sure
that
this
happen.
is secure and
It'll
it
automatically
works. So
go
that's
through.
already
Literally, I
set
just
up,
typed
just
it
so
in
you
there and
know.
it did it. Now,
So
you
I'm
will see
going
it
to
do some
do a new
things.
daily
You have to
report. And I'm
go get a
saying
cup of
that
coffee before
there
you
weren't
do
any
it. The
safety
interesting thing
incidents
here,
and
as
we
we
stopped
think about
pouring
how
concrete because it's
consumer
so
AI
cold.
is going
So you
to
click
find
that
its way
once
integrating with
and you're done.
enterprise AI,
Now,
much like
it's
our
going to
phones
be
did
doing
years
some
ago.
things
Anybody
here. It's
remember
going to
to
have
bring
to
your own
figure
device
out
whenever
where
we
to
were
put
freaking
it,
out
make
because our
sure it's
emails
putting
were
it
off
in the
and we were
right
private
place, but
phones
you're
and we
not
couldn't figure
involved
out
in
how to
any of
manage
that.
it?
It's just
I
doing
think you're
its
going to see the
thing.
same thing where you're going to start
And
to see
meanwhile, while
interfaces
that's
between
happening,
trusted
so you'll see the whole thing
platforms that have
takes
all
a
the
couple of
security
seconds.
permissioning,
And then
all the things that you want
on
in a
the
big
Kahua
platform.
side,
But the ability to access it
once it's
through one
figured
pane of
all of
glass.
that
So
out,
maybe it's Kahua right now, maybe
it
it's
will
Join, maybe it's
populate
some
without
other,
you having
other
had to do
product that you're
anything.
using, that you can look at
So
in one
right
place, and
there,
before
you're
you leave
seeing
the
it
building, you go
right.
into that platform. But if it's just me entering
And then
something because I'm
in
doing my
there
job,
will be the
think about how much
content that
friction
we're
that
looking
removes. I
for.
think that's really exciting. Still early days to getting
Just
that
give
to
it a
work
sec.
was a little finicky. The Kahua team have actually
So
built
you
it
can
pretty
see
well.
that it had
They'll
no
get
safety
updates on the way.
incidents,
But the
concrete
point is,
pour.
it's coming. And
Some
you'll
of
see
the
that
other
in most
data
AI
wasn't in
tools
what
and
I
the
gave it,
platforms
so
that
that you
more
can go in and either fix
successful.
that
So
or you
again,
can
there's a
enter
lot
it
of great
yourself.
products out
There's some
there.
other things you can
Personally,
do
I
to
think
automate
as
that.
people are beginning
But the
to get
broad
started,
point here is that
off the shelf
we're now in a
chatbots are
place
good.
where
So
you're going to
gives you
start
a
to
little bit
see
of a
people
sense of
able
what
to
AI is good
access
at and
these
what
powerful
it's still
systems
pretty
that have
novel.
all of what
I
you
think
need
when
in
we
a
talk
big
in
platform
abstractions about how good AI is,
through a new
and then we talk
surface
about
where,
how it
because the
hallucinates or
platform
fails, if you
itself
haven't
has
seen
made
it
that
happen yet, and you're
possible and they're
trying to
controlling what
plan
you
your
can
weekend,
do and so
you don't
on.
have an
So
intuitive
it's not
sense
really a
of it.
new
I think
source of
that's valuable.
risk. It's a new source of
Excellent.
speed and
Thank you, Brian.
convenience.
Yeah, I just want to add.
And if in the
a
case of
comment on
daily
what Katie
reports,
just
which we
mentioned.
always have an
So
issue with
one of the
people
things
doing
that's
enough
extremely
of,
exciting is the
that's
fact
a
that
really
this
big
industry
win.
is still very much paper-based, right? We're pushing Word, Excel, PDFs back and forth. And one of the things
Here are
that you
two
kind of
examples
described here
of
is imagine
sort of
getting a PDF
everyday
document
tools
from one of your
that
vendors or contractors
complement
and
and
just
are
being able
often
to
an
drop an
interface
in,
where
and it
users are
extrapolates all
going to
that
use
information
AI.
from the document. So again, back
So
to the
there's two
concept
things I
we
want to
had
show you.
before
One of them
about
is a
integration,
chatbot, which
the
obviously
inability
everyone's
for
heard
us,
of,
the amount
but
of time
it's
that people
interesting
have
how
to
good they've
re-enter data.
gotten. So I'm using one.
Those days may be slowly going away. But I want to go back to a very, very important point for everybody here in the audience, because I look out in the audience and most of you are about my age. I was around in 1994, 97. We actually built the first internet project management system called Constructware. And at that time, everything was up for grabs. Everything was up. Every business process was up for grabs. I will tell you, if you are not spending a minimum of 1 hour a day educating yourself on AI, this is moving so fast. The capabilities are progressing. Every single week, something new is coming out. So from a business perspective, I think you need need to understand the trajectory that this is going, because majority of you are out there are executives, and understand how can you capitalize on utilizing AI internally within your organization to streamline your operations.
Andy, we've got a little show and tell for you. This is going to play on YouTube, so I'm going to ask if we can turn the volume back up for this one, for this video presentation.
Just as a bit of a kind of a teaser as we, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay. A bit of a teaser as we get into this. So again, as I mentioned earlier, that IBM is really working hard to embed AI in everything we do. This, I think, is one of the sexier pieces that we're doing. It's a natural language AI chatbot inside of Maximo. So you can find the data, or an end user can more easily find the data that they need in order to do their job on a day-to-day basis. So my colleague Colton is going to narrate this, but I think he did a pretty good job of showing the capabilities, at least out of the gate.
Here we go.
Will happen on the same day. Now, as a planner, this is something that I would usually have to manually drag and drop these preventive maintenance so that it is allocated
This is not
to
the right
the
video, Nicholas.
resources that are actually available for that day.
Oh, it's
now,
not?
bringing
No.
that back, as I mentioned, over on the left-hand side, we see a list of
Okay, apologies. Let me,
Graphical scheduling,
now, if
which is,
AI
which
were
is
managing
another fun part of Maximo, but that's not the, the AI piece.
all right.
You know, Brian Moore, I appreciate your guidance on, you know, maybe you should be thinking about it with your team an hour and a day or so. I mean, we're not within our project and construction managers. We've got projects that we have to get done, you know, to implement new tools, to think about how to, where can we implement AI, where can we implement some of these strategies is really hard. You know, we are doing a few things. You know, we are using a chat bot for our work order intake. We are investing how we, you know, make it a language that people can understand and insert a facilities
Hey everyone,
request.
quick
Like
Maximo
that we're
update.
working on
Today
right
we're going
now.
to be walking through
We're
the
working
new
on
exciting
putting a
Gen AI
camera on
capabilities
top
to be
of
released in
the
the latest 9.1
robots that go scrub the floors in the hallways, and the cameras will scan the walls and then write a work order if they see a deficiency, and import a work order. So those are two of the things that we're working on right now.
Yeah, just so one thing I would mention for everybody, you probably remember this book from many decades ago, but for everyone that's young, I highly recommend you reading the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He speaks about the fact that you need to have 10,000 hours before you become an expert. That's why Bill Gates, he knew everything about computers before anybody else knew about it, so hence he was able to capitalize on it. So that's the way you need to be looking at AI within your business, is who are the individuals that are becoming your AI experts that can help you better understand how you can capitalize on what's happening. This truly is transformative. This is the one thing. Again, we've had a lot of great things, a lot of technologies come out, you know, over the decades that this industry has been able to capitalize on. But this definitely is the one thing that is going to change this industry going forward.
If I can just add to that before we dive in. The value of whether you can do an hour a day, which is great. The point is, you know your business and your process, and it's bringing your intuition to what it can do, but you won't be able to do that if you're not into it more than just playing with it a little bit. It does take some failure and trying new things, and I often tell people, start with your home life. Start with, you know, planning the weekend, or, you know, you name it. But it really is bringing the human intuition and understanding of how people really do things in a way that nobody outside of your organization is going to be particularly good at, without, you know, some serious questioning and so on. But bringing that together is the value of that. It's not just that you have a strategic vision, it's actually quite operational and tactical, because that's where the magic happens, is when you meet, when people are creative because they understand both sides of it.
Excellent. All right. Andy, back to you.
Go here now.
Update.
Thanks,
Today
Nicholas.
we're going to be walking through the new exciting Gen AI capabilities to be released in the latest 9.1 Maximo coming out in June. So let's jump in. So here I'm logged in as a Maximo supervisor, and I want to retrieve a list of assets at my Bedford site. So Maximo now has the AI built in that can understand the data that exists within the Maximo database. This includes asset records, documents, manuals, and can even perform actions. So next, as a supervisor, let's say that I want to find a specific pump that is leaking and is operational. Here, all I have to do is create a quick filter, and we're good to go. Now, to ensure action is being taken to avoid downtime, I'm going to go ahead and prompt the AI to see if there's any work orders open to resolve the issue. Maximo AI automatically pulls up the work orders with problem codes of type leak, and also work orders that maybe someone forgot to add the problem code, but included the word leak somewhere in the work order record. So here I'll identify the prioritized work, select the work order. Now, Wilson, who's in charge of this work order, texted me he's not coming into work. So let's go ahead and reassign this to a different skilled team member, Miller. Now, to confirm this is now assigned to Miller, let's just prompt the AI. There we go. Now we see Miller is now assigned to this work, including its underlying tasks. So let's go ahead and approve the work. So lastly, clean data is a huge problem for me as a supervisor. I want to understand which of my work orders does not have a job plan. So like the rest of these processes, I'll type in a simple prompt, and there you go. So let's add this job plan to the work order, and all done. Easy as that. Thanks for the time, and keep on the lookout for more exciting Maximo updates.
So again, a really simple use case of how AI can help streamline a mechanic's day, as well as from a supervisor perspective, look for assets that may have gaps in the data that may be causing issues downstream, right? So lots of use cases for Maximo and AI in Maximo, and we're just beginning on our journey. So look for more as we progress into 2026.
Brian Ellsworth, as I open up our presentation again, I want to ask you a question. If you, in your wildest dreams, could create any kind of applications you wanted with AI to help Mayo Clinic solve a problem that you face today, what would be the problem that you'd go solve?
Well, it's kind of funny you bring that up, Nicholas. So I came down here from Minnesota with my wife and daughter, and I was talking to my wife last night about, presenting at the Construction Users Roundtable, and she came to the dinner last night, or the hors d'oeuvres, and she's like, well, there's a lot of people here, and they look at all the different systems, and I said, yeah, in your wildest dreams, honey, did you ever think that I would be the one representing the world-famous Mayo Clinic in front of all these construction owners? And she says, honey, you've never been in my wildest dreams. All right, yeah, so thanks for setting that up for me. I appreciate that. So how are we using AI in our wildest dreams? I mean, I don't know what that necessarily looks like. I mean, relative to Asset-Centric is to have a complete built environment record so that we can make decisions on how to maintain our facilities. Relative to project delivery, what type of contract delivery model is best in what situations, whether that's radiology or lab or medical office buildings, whether we do multi-prime, whether we do GMP, whether we do, God forbid, integrated project delivery. Using some of those predictive models are the things that right now we have data. Right now we can look at charts and graphs and dashboards.
Here are two
But really
examples
to
of
have
sort of
the AI
everyday tools
help us
that
dive into the systems more
complement
efficiently
and
is where
are
those
often
wildest
an
dreams lie.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. All right, Brian Moore, you've got some show and tell now. I think this is you.
I can't see. Let me come down here.
And tell me if you want this to stop or go faster.
All right, so this one is an example of the assist, and you can go faster, go and make it 2x. So basically what you're going to see here is really a combination of what I was speaking about before, kind of the asset-centric component, AI, and then also the integration into IBM Maximo. So here I'm in a submittal, and what we're able to do is dynamically understand, because again, this is not after the project. This is not people collecting the information at the end and handing it over. Everything is built in as part of the process. So as part of the submittal process, it's identifying what documents or attributes have we not collected at this moment in time, and you're able to identify that information, and you can then go forward, and then you kind of get into the field now, and that's where we're starting to have somebody actually install the asset. So it's not represented via mobile phone, but basically, if you can go forward some more, hopefully. There we go. You basically have a nameplate. How difficult is it for somebody to capture the information on the nameplate? So basically, you're able just to take a photo of that nameplate, and then AI is able to extract all the content, all the attributes that are applicable. So it's beyond the serial number information. It could be voltage. It could be whatever attributes that you've defined that are on that serial number. It will automatically extract it and fill it in for you. And then the final piece is, now that we have majority of the documents and attributes associated with it, it dynamically passes all this information over to Maximo. So now you're just seeing the nameplate itself. It's filling it in. If you could scroll a little bit faster there. Then you get all this information, again, as it's filled in. You're not waiting until the end. Now that information can be passed over to IBM Maximo, and you're seeing all the information then filled in. And the value proposition then becomes, as you're managing your project, you have all this dynamic information right at your fingertips across all your assets. Where do we stand with respect to having all of our documentation? So it's not just about standing up an asset, it's about having all the documents and attributes readily available once that asset is installed versus getting that information at the end of the project. So now you're seeing within Maximo, all that information is filled in.
So you talked about earlier two kind of ways to use AI. One is to create, capture data, and one is to assist in decision making. This would be an example of that. Create,
Assist.
capture, yeah. Okay.
Then the second one here, we will go quickly because I invite everybody just to come by the booth. We have a 3-minute challenge of you being able to just create an app from scratch. And so far we've had several people that have already created applications in less than 3 minutes. Again, the concept here is, you want to scroll faster?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's not the right one. But basically what you have is you have this ability to create, click on the Canvas button within Kahoot, and via natural language, you're able to just type what you want. And once you go through and you start typing that information, it creates the application so you can actually visually see it. You know, software is no different than the construction industry. The design part is equally as important as the actual construction phase. And so what we provide here is the ability, this is just a Word document. I'm able to, somebody just sent me a Word document. Here's a business process with all the fields, all the workflows that I want. I can copy that information. It's going to create what's called an inquiry app. I go into Kahoot, I click on Canvas, I paste that in right here, and basically AI is going to take over and dynamically build the app. And the value proposition here is it's going to interact with you. So it's going to ask you, is this what you intended? So you have the opportunity to make modifications to it. So there's the application schema, there's the workflow at the bottom. And if you can just scroll a little bit forward here, the value proposition then becomes, I could say, well, I want to add a new field, or I want to change my lookups, or maybe I want to modify the workflow. You are able to real-time modify the application and then visually see it in the product so you can validate, is this exactly what I wanted to see? So now you're seeing the application with the fields, with the layout, and you can actually enter data too, so you can get that confirmation before it goes to production that this is exactly the way you wanted it. So the objective here is to enable the industry to innovate, right? Greg spoke about this yesterday. We've got to rapidly innovate. So what we're trying to bring to market here is the ability for people to come up with ideas and innovate rapidly by creating applications and consolidating other applications that may be Word or Excel that are just out there and creating new applications.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all. We appreciate the audience today and the attention you gave us. We would love to invite you to come by the Kahoot booth, create your own app in 3 minutes or less. Bring whatever problem or process you want to bring, and we will let you create an app inside the environment, test it for yourself. Brian, Hugh, Andy, really appreciate you guys being up here with me today. How about a hand for the panelists? Thank you all.